Welcome back to the Dr. Vincent Buscemi podcast, formerly the Health and Wealth podcast, formerly the Citizen Hustle podcast, formerly the Toothpaste podcast. Shut up. I'm doing my best. Look at this guy right here. This is a physician assistant, Stefan Hartmann. He is fully taken over health in his city, and he is treating patients at a more holistic level. He looks like a professional bodybuilder. I just had an hour conversation with him. An amazing guy. From the start of his life, his parents taught him to question authority, to question the status quo thinking, and he's been doing that his entire medical career. He's only 30 years old, and he already has an amazing reputation from bringing people from sickness to health. If you're in I think he said the Melbourne area, I'm not sure what part of Florida, but if you're in Florida, look up Stefan. He's going to get you healthy again. He has such an interesting backstory. He actually was fired from a couple jobs. His classmates don't talk to him anymore, all because he's trying to find the true answers to health and to find the root cause of disease. Stefan, thank you so much for this podcast. Guys, you're going to love this one. Basically, what's the origin story? Because you definitely don't follow mainstream medicine, but you look really, really healthy. So how did you get on this alternative path to healing people?
It was my parents. They didn't vaccinate me. They were very like nutrition was everything, right? We never went to a doctor. I never went to a Western doctor. I was born in Texas, and then I was raised in Europe, Italy, and Germany for 8 years. But when we had an illness, it was Chinese medicine. That's what my parents studied in their youth, and that's what they practiced in the household. We practiced a macrobiotic diet. We don't try it. It's weird, like almost proxy vegan diets. But yeah, and it wasn't the healthiest thing either. I wasn't the healthiest kid. I was like, I had a Winnie the Pooh bloated belly from all like the vegetables and plant fiber and stuff like that. It wasn't great. But no, my parents were always focused on nutrition to heal the body. That's the primary driver of disease and health. It's nutrition. That's how I was raised. But we went to America eventually. Yes, because it's you can't really do much in Europe. Can't start businesses. You can't like. There's so many laws and rules. So America is like still the place of freedom. That's where you want to go. So we did that, but my parents were like, oh, a real job, you have to go into medicine. Medicine, people are sick. You're always going to have like an income that way. So even though I had all this holistic training and mindset, I went to allopathic medicine, which the right direction was PA school, physician assistant school. And I think it was the best choice for me, right? Because it allowed me to get a degree in 2 to 3 years and preserve some of my sanity, right? There was a lot of brainwashing with it, and they didn't like me very much because I thought differently. I had barely survived PA school. It was pretty brutal. No one really liked me. All my preceptors, they didn't like the questioning of things. But I managed to get through it barely in 3 years, master's program, which I don't think I would have survived a doctoral level of brainwashing. They probably would have flunked me out. But I managed to get out of there and went into general practice. I started working in internal medicine and urgent care office. And that was great because it was actually kind of a really underserved area. So I saw a lot of pathology, a lot of disease. I saw these people coming in with all this sickness and illness and just disease states. And I was like, what? I was trying to do functional medicine in an urgent care. I was telling people about nutrition and diet and supplements they should be taking. And some people, little light bulbs went off. Other people just looked at me like a fish. Right? You get that blank fish-eyed stare a lot from people who just, it's not going to work. So there's always that allopathic medicines, pills for these people. You're not going to change them. But there's some people, a little light bulb might turn on sometimes. You might put a little seed in their brain and they start thinking, what? This drug causes this problem. Why can't I just be taking something natural? So a lot of people might be open to natural things if you just sit and talk to them about it. Pandemic started, and I knew I needed to do something else. I needed to do what I'm doing now, but there wasn't like that opportunity there. Like that place I was working at, I told them my vision, but they didn't buy into it. They were like, all right. We're not going to do this. We're just going to do our thing here, stay in our lane. So then I worked in what did I do next? I did spine surgery for a spine surgeon for a while, and that was okay, but that didn't work out. And then I worked in psychiatry. That really didn't work out because psychiatry is absolutely the way it's practiced is absolutely awful, right? It's just stay in your lane, give a pill for a symptom, don't order any tests, don't even order a testosterone level in a depressed man. Like, can you believe that? I got slapped on the wrist for ordering testosterone levels in
By
depressed
who,
men.
your boss or who gave?
By the people who employed me, yeah. And then what really sealed the deal was when I started talking off chance positively about ivermectin. Oh, that was it. He's out the door. You can't say anything positive about ivermectin, even though it's been prescribed billions of times. So that didn't work out. And the whole time I was planning to start Iron Direct primary care. I was putting the ducks in alignment, trying to get everything situated and sealed the deal on that. So by the time psychiatry job ended, I had already started Iron Direct primary care. What I did was telemedicine and house calls, like very simple, a low cost startup, and I had a couple of people sign up from my work in the urgent care. These people always told me, if you ever start something, we'll be your first patient. So I'd hit them up. So we started with like 2 or 3 patients. And I still worked urgent cares to pay the bills. I've traveled all throughout Florida. This was in the height of like the vaccine. People are getting vaccinated. So I just posted about this on Twitter just now. It's like this conversation would happen 1,000 times. They'd come into the urgent care with something, some weird new neurological issue, some chronic pain, some like brain fog, fatigue, or some new weird skin rash and illness. Thousands of times I saw this. And I'd ask them, when did you get the jab? When was it? And they'd look at me like, what? Well, why are you asking this question? When did you get the jab? And he would always like be proceeding whatever new weird condition they had. And I would ask my colleagues, as I work sometimes with other people in the clinic, I'd be like, hey, because they'd come out of the room and they'd be like, this weird young guy, he's 30 years old. He's got this weird chest pain. He doesn't fit any of the typical criteria for like a pulmonary embolism or a heart attack. He's 30 years old. What's going on? I'm like, did you ask him when he got vaxxed? And they'd look at me like, should I ask that? Like, yes, you should ask that. So I sent him back into the room and he asked. And invariably, the answer was yes. They got vaccinated in the weeks preceding it, because this was when everyone was getting vaccinated. And we were seeing this, people coming into the urgent care again and again. But to this day, like I saw 2 patients yesterday coming, new patients to my clinic. They've gotten the multi-million-dollar workup. They've had been scanned literally from like head to toe. And they get diagnosis of idiopathic, which means I don't know, we're an idiot. Idiopathic. Okay. And I sit down and I ask, when did you get the clot shot? And they look at me. What do you mean? Like, when did you get it? Your symptom happened here, this weird condition here. When did you go? Whoa, I got the 3rd booster in the month preceding this. I'm like, yeah, you're vaccine injured. They're like, what? How do you know this? I'm not an idiot. But still, my colleagues out there, I don't know what it is. It's the lack of intellectual curiosity, or not wanting to put 2 and 2 together, or that whole correlation causation issue. When it comes to this thing, you look at a weird condition that appears out of nowhere, and you have this experimental thing that you gave to a patient in the months preceding it, and then you have this thing that you can't control, you don't understand. You clearly put 2 and 2 together. But this has happened again and again, thousands of times I've seen this. And it still bothers me to say why no one's putting. Do you understand why no one's putting this together?
Fear. They're obviously afraid. So you're unique in that you are in the medical profession. And were you nervous at all that the urgent care was going to fire you? Or
no, I got fired from a lot of
okay.
places. They let me know. Yeah, I got slapped on the wrist various times, and it was just, people eventually were like, you just got to move on or something like that,
As a board, I don't know how the Florida board is, the medical board. Have they ever reached out to you about what you're talking about?
They're very good here in Florida. I know some of my colleagues in the FLCCC, they got in trouble for various things like writing mask exemptions, writing vaccine exemptions, which, they got in trouble with the board. I never got in trouble with the board. Florida's been pretty good so far about that.
So the urgent care heard you talking about vaccines, and then they fired you. How did that work?
How did that work? No, it wasn't like that. It was just like I kept asking these questions, and eventually it was like, hey, yeah, you should be. They were always like restricting, like maybe my hours or something like that. It was like not a direct environment. It's just the environment became a little bit more hostile. And the psychiatry job, that was pretty clear. They really didn't like me talking about ivermectin and trying to treat root cause, trying to give people supplements. They really didn't like me advising patients to take supplements. Yeah, they're like, "Oh, this is not FDA approved. You can't be telling patients to take a B vitamin. This could be dangerous or something like that." I'm like, "What? There's supplements. They were giving people freaking Xanax every day. That's not." I mean, comparing a supplement to Xanax and thinking that one's more dangerous, like a supplement's more dangerous. Nonsense, absolute nonsense. The spine surgery, that was good though. He was getting crushed by insurance. He couldn't afford to keep me on. And then I was working for Advent Health, urgent cares. They didn't like that I was prescribing hydroxychloroquine to some people, so they didn't like that too much. But that job just dried up anyway because the pandemic started slowing down. So it was all good. Everything. I knew what I had to do, and I was going in the right direction just to start this and help
At
people.
any point during this, because you're such an independent thinker, were you like, I shouldn't even be in medicine? Like, this is too hard for me to think this way and practice in medicine?
Yeah, I was thinking of alternatives. I was like, well, maybe I got to go back to being a professional tennis coach, personal training, something like that. I always have that backup plan in mind because medicine, as it is currently, it's pretty bad for patients and for people like me who try to think independently. I don't know what I would be doing if it weren't for Iron Direct Primary Care. I'd probably be working random urgent cares and, you know, try not to stay too long in one spot. You can work locums. You can hop around to different places, just work for part time for a time for somebody. I think that would be the thing I could do is just work part time for a place before they
Found
figured out I was too.
out.
I mean, yeah, go to the next place before they figured me out.
That's too stressful. So you start your own clinic, and then how many patients did you have in the beginning?
Oh, I started out with maybe 50 or 60. And I gradually started accumulating them just by word of mouth primarily and social media there. Social media was a pretty good driver too. Maybe a couple patients out of the urgent cares, they came to me too, but mostly it was word of
Okay.
mouth.
And then you left the macrobiotic type of eating, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
have a similar diet. Are you the full carnivore diet? Or explain your diet.
No, so I do need carbohydrates for playing professional tennis, I've found. Uh, it's very interesting. I've tried carnivore, but I don't have that explosiveness when I'm doing straight carnivore diet. I have good energy levels, and I'm pretty lean too, which might also be an issue for tennis because I'll do carnivore once a year for 1 week when I do an aesthetics Christmas photo shoot, and it dries me out. You can see all my muscle definition very well. You can see it on my website how like every muscle like defined in my body. I lose a lot of water when I do this diet, and so that's also a detriment towards tennis because I sweat so much and I need that water. And carbohydrates help you hold on to some of that water in the muscle. But primarily, it's meat. Most of my diet is meats, eggs, beef, etc. I do eat carbohydrate, and typically it's white rice. It's nothing crazy. It's like a bit of white rice, especially during tournaments. It's white rice. I don't eat gluten or bread products during tournament training when I'm training intensely in tennis, which is all the time, because I'll get tendonitis. I'll get lateral epicondylitis. It's something that actually ended my tennis career early on in college tennis. I was taking ibuprofens, icing it, doing all the things that they tell you to do. None of it worked, and I didn't know it was gluten for a long time. I actually learned it was gluten from a naturopathic doctor that I played tennis with up in Massachusetts during PA school.
So are you completely gluten free then, right now?
Well, no, I'll eat like a sourdough bread. There's a fantastic bakery here, and I'll get a sourdough bread on occasion from them, but not when I'm training intensely tennis because it'll still give me a bit of a tendonitis, and I don't want to have that when I'm playing
So
tennis.
it's obviously increasing your inflammation. This
Yeah, it
okay.
does.
So when patients come to you, they already know your philosophy of medicine.
Yeah. Most of the time they do. Sometimes you'll get someone referred by someone and they have no idea what they're getting into. And I sit there and I'm like, okay, they didn't, the one who referred them didn't really explain what's going on here. And so you get a little bit that fish-eyed stare. But when you start talking to them and teaching them about health, then they start waking up a little bit and they're like, oh, wow, my doctors have been lying to me. So they'll say that. So you're telling me my doctors have been lying to me the whole time? I'm like, they're not lying to you. They just don't know any better, and they're just doing what they've been taught.
So, what are
Right?
the most common problems people come to you for?
Fatigue and obesity.
Okay. And how are you treating that?
Everyone's fatigued, first of all.
Yeah.
And there's so many reasons why are people fatigued. And when I was still in my big group text from PA school before they blocked me, all my peers. Yeah, I was still talking with them for a while, and I would see in their comments they're like, "Oh, I just had a patient chief complaint fatigue come into my office. I can't stand these." My peers hate fatigue, and fatigue happens in the primary care every day. Like they'll get every patient's fatigue. My peers hate it because there's no pharmaceutical to treat fatigue, right? They understand the allopathic medical system. It's a symptom for a pill. There's no pill that really helps fatigue if you think about it. And I don't know of any. But in functional medicine, we peel back the layers of why they have fatigue, and we address that. We treat that root cause. I love fatigue. I can treat fatigue all day. I know how to fix that. Right? I just listen to people's symptoms or their history, and I'll tell them right up why they're fatigued and what they need to change. So that's easy for me.
What are some of the common things people are doing that are causing fatigue?
Mostly it's poor diet. They're eating the standard American diet, which is mostly grains and sugar and low salt. Well, they may be eating high salt, but it's not the right ratio. And they might be drinking plenty of water throughout the day, but they're not adding water or salt to it. So they're really running off of low protein, and they've been told to avoid fats, and they've been told to eat a lot of plant matter. So they might be eating a lot of plants, and they think they're doing great. But their mitochondria is struggling, right? They're full of seed oils, polyunsaturated omega 6s. Their cabinets are full of these condiments. Every one of them has canola oil and soybean oil. It's just clogging up their cellular metabolism, and they're fatigued and obese, and they don't understand why. And it's just their diet for the most part.
Is that where you start then? So when someone comes in, they say, Doc, I'm fat, I'm tired. What's the first step?
I run says, what did you have for breakfast today? And they'll tell me. And someone, what did they tell me yesterday? They're eating this yogurt mix, right? And it says like 20 grams of sugar in it, and they have like 3 cups of coffee, and they have, what do they have for lunch? A granola bar. And then maybe for dinner, they actually eat something of substance. They eat maybe a potato and some meat. That's pretty good. But they have low protein throughout the day, and they're not telling me this until I ask them. I'm like, well, do you eat anything in between these meals? And yeah, they're snacking on something. They grab the candy bar or something. They're trying to get these little bursts of sugar energy throughout the day, and that's how they're sustaining their brain. And that's not what the brain runs off of. It doesn't like eating these little candies and grains throughout the day. It's not conducive towards optimal lifestyle, and that's primarily what drives their fatigue. If you can get them to eat a proper ancestral diet, their life, that spark comes back a lot of the time.
So what are your colleagues saying? The PA group that kicked you out, when are you telling them how you're treating fatigue, and they're telling you this is ridiculous?
Yeah, I would tell them, hey, like test their hormones. I tell you what, this guy that you're talking about, he has low testosterone, and they're like, oh, I don't want to test testosterone. These guys, they just want to come in and they want to get erections and stuff like most of my peers. They like, oh, you just want to give guys erections by giving testosterone. Yeah, that's what they think. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I was trying to bring when I was trying to find an MD to come onto my practice. I talked to one. It was a good mentor of mine, and I told him about what I wanted to do, and that's what he said. He said, "You just want to give guys erections?" I'm like, no, testosterone is like so much more than that. Okay, now hormones are so much more than what you think they are. Oh, it's just about sex, you know? Yeah, it is, but there's so much more.
But let's say you're 45 and you can't achieve an erection. Wouldn't you want somebody to help you to get one?
Yeah, I mean that'd be huge for their life.
Yeah. But go back to PA school because this blow. So, what are you saying in PA school to make it so difficult to be with your classmates?
Well, in PA school, I was pretty conservative back then, and they didn't like that. You know, when you're in Massachusetts in a university, and then you're doing rotations at this big like medical institute, everyone assumes you're a liberal. They just talk to you as if you're a liberal and that you're all in line with the LGBTQ and all of it. They just assume they talk to you like this. You just got to shut up. You got to keep your head down. You just got to nod and agree with them. But they knew that I wasn't like that, so they didn't like me one for that purpose. But then the second is I was questioning, I was asking questions, and I thought they were legitimate questions. But you're not supposed to question apparently about medical dogma, right? If something is dogma and you're just supposed to go with it and you're just supposed to do it, you're not supposed to think critically about it, which was really weird to me because one of the first classes that I had in PA school was evidence-based medicine, and we got this great doctor. He's a prison doctor, and the reason he worked in the prisons because he didn't get along with the colleagues in the ivory tower at the big universities. So he stayed in the prison, and he gave us this lecture on evidence-based medicine. It was basically looking at statin drugs, looking at how these trials were manipulated, and so that was eye-opening for me. But that was like the one and only class, and I apparently was the only one of my 30 classmates who was paying attention in this class, right? Because after that, it was just rote memorization, learn a symptom uh, to pill, basically workup to pill. Like you have to do this workup and these symptoms so that you can give the pill. That's pretty much what it was. And that's why uh, that's why PAs exist in the first place. It's kind of like I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever described it like this, but the reason PAs and nurse practitioners exist is because medicine has been distilled down to the level of basically rote memorization, right? You don't need to have all this education at doctoral level to practice medicine in the US. You just need to follow the guidelines. You just need to do as you're told. There's established guidelines. You follow them, and no one will ever say you did anything wrong if you just do what's the guidelines are, right? And so that's why PAs exist. It's to help the medical establishment see more patients, right? Drive more revenue for the company, for the doctor that you're employed by, see more patients. PAs can help. You just follow the guidelines. You just follow as you're told, and you make more money for people by seeing more patients. So that's what it is. But there's not much room for critical thinking and really trying to get to the root cause of problems, and that's because there's no time for it if you're using an insurance model of care. I once got a job offer at Omni Health, a primary care job. They said, "Oh, we'll pay you what was it, $87,000 a year, but you have to see at least 26 patients a day in a primary care setting. If you want to make a bonus at the end of the year, you got to try to hit 32. You got to get those numbers up, son. You got to grind it." And so I looked at this job and I was thinking, oh my God, I got to see 30 patients a day in primary care. Mind you, I spend for a new patient here, I spend 1 hour with them. Follow ups are minimum 30 minutes. There's not enough time in the day to see 30
In eight
patients, right?
hours.
In 8 hours. It's not possible, right? You would have no
Yeah.
life at all. You're just doing charts all night, which a lot of my primary care colleagues are doing, which is why there's a primary care shortage in the US because no one wants to do it. It's terrible. It's no lifestyle. So that's the problem with primary care. It's just that insurance grind and just cranking patients out every 15 minutes. So you literally have to see one. You have to listen to their symptoms. You have to give them a pill. You have to out the door. You have to have them come back in maybe a month or 3 months, whenever their insurance allows you to build their insurance again. And then you see them again and you talk to them again for 15 minutes and you do it again, right? That's the grind. So I've gotten away from that by doing direct primary care, which it's an affordable subscription model of care. Patients can schedule appointments when they need it. But it gives me that flexibility to see patients and spend more time and actually think critically about their disease and illness, order advanced testing, spend time interpreting advanced testing with them, trying to figure out a root cause solution for their issue, which is not
So
easy.
are you completely insurance free
Yeah, it's basically a gym membership, essentially.
with a highly trained, very intelligent physician assistant, not a trainer? So do you bill insurance at all and the insurance that goes to their house, or you have no connection with insurance?
No connection at all with insurance. I'm completely separate from it.
How do you, so I'm insurance free as a dentist, but what I do is I bill their insurance, the check goes to their house, and they pay me up front. How do
Mhm.
you, I don't want to say convince, but how do you explain to patients that the level of care you're giving them is impossible with insurance?
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, that is the big selling point. I don't know. I don't really have to explain myself anymore. Patients get referred to me because they hear that I'm great and that I actually take time. And then when they sit in front of me and I just sit with them for an hour and I let them talk, and they're like, "Wow, no one's ever, no, none of my doctors that I've ever been to has ever listened to me like that." Man, you do that enough times, and people recognize that what you're doing is valuable, and then you order tests that the doctor would never order, right? No one orders hormone panels for some reason. I don't know why. It's critical towards health. I order hormone panels routinely, and people are like, "Wow, this is cool. I like to see what's going on here." And then I order advanced lipid particle panels. I try to differentiate not just high cholesterol, but what's high inflammation, what's causing arterial disease, what's the root cause of this. So I give them a lot more information, and patients are intelligent, at least the patients that come to me, and they want to get a little bit more information about their health rather than just be told by somebody in a white coat with a big degree on the wall from a fancy university that they have to take this pill. Patients don't accept that, at least the patients that come to me, and they want a little bit more information. They have intellectual curiosity, and those are the patients that come to me and like this level of care.
Well, you're so much smarter than your colleagues because you kind of set yourself up in a way to get the better patients or patients that are also taking responsibility for their own health. Because your endpoint's not the pill. Your endpoint is to actually get them healthier.
Correct. The thing also that differentiates me from my colleagues is that when you don't take insurance, you don't want to see your patients more often. So when you're taking insurance, you want the sicker patient because they have to come in more often, right? You want them in every week if possible so that you can bill insurance. I once worked for one internist, and she told me when I worked for her urgent care, she was like, "Find me someone with meat on them," right? She wanted someone who was very sick. And if I could send her very sick patients, she could see them more often, and she makes more money by giving them more pills. So she has to monitor their liver enzymes more often. She has to monitor their cholesterol more often. They like this. But for me, I want to make my patients so healthy that they're not blowing up my phone at 10 p.m. because they're sick again, right? I want my patients optimized and healthy and not seeing me all the time, right? So it's a completely different model of care. Absolutely different. The incentive is different. My incentive is different.
Yeah, and now you're competing with the free market. Now you're competing with big screen TVs, and you actually have to get results to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
So, what questions were you asking in PA school that were changing your line of thinking? Obviously, cholesterol, because you eat a lot of meat. So,
Yeah.
what else were you like, this is complete BS?
Yeah, in pediatrics was that was a lot of BS for me. I was actually held back in the pediatrics rotations. I had to repeat it twice. Yeah, I had to repeat it twice because I didn't get along with the vaccines. For instance, I wasn't asking when the child was last vaccinated. I wasn't asking the questions because you're supposed to these well child checks. All a well child check is figure out if they need another poke today. You need to look in the chart, see if they got their last vaccine. Oh, it's not up to date. Got to give them another poke here. I wasn't asking that because it didn't it didn't sit well with me. I didn't get any vaccines when I was little. I didn't want to poke all the children there. And I was talking to parents about you know maybe pushing the vaccines out, not doing them all today. You can't do that. And the other thing that really bothered me was, oh my God, what was it? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I had to ask the parents if they were on a well water or a tap water line. And you'll know this as a dentist. I want to hear your opinion on this. And they asked me, you got to ask the patients if they're on well water or tap water. If they're on well water, you have to prescribe the children fluoride
That blows my
tablets
mind.
because the fluoride tablets strengthen their
It does
teeth.
not.
What do you think about that?
uh, that is complete BS. In dental school, there was a pediatric clinic, and they had us ask the same questions, and they would want us to prescribe fluoride tablets to kids. And I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to.
No,
No,
no. It doesn't make your teeth
it
stronger.
makes everything worse.
It makes your health worse. Why? Where is that? That's from? Why would they think
So
that?
there's this town in Colorado where there was a lot of fluoride in the water, and the kids had good teeth, and they just thought that maybe fluoride makes your teeth stronger. But there's no connection between systemic fluoride and dental health. Zero.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
thought. I like the Weston A. Price method more.
that's what I prescribe to. Um,
Yeah.
Fat soluble, K2, vitamin D, reduced sugar. I'm gonna get slammed for this, but you don't need fluoride to have healthy teeth. There's not a fluoride deficiency. That's not why you have cavities.
No. What do you think about the mouthwash?
Don't use mouthwash. Um, I'm telling you, my patients that have mouthwash all the time have chronic bad breath. And I know they're linking studies to high blood pressure, diabetes,
Yes.
and destroying the oral microbiome. And I can tell you from clinical experience, that's probably true. But it dries your mouth out, and the more you'll see in your patient, ask them if they use mouthwash. I bet they all have bad breath.
Hey, I've sat in a couple anti-aging conferences. There's Dr. Nathan Bryant. He's the big guy saying that don't use mouthwash. It destroys your microbiome in the mouth, and it decreases nitric oxide producing
Yep,
bacteria.
which helps you control blood pressure and dilates your
Right.
arteries. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
So are all your patients then pretty holistically minded? Do you have any patients? They
Yeah.
are. Okay.
Yeah. If they're not, they come to me and they learn it real quick. Like I had this guy the other day, and I don't know how he got to me, but I sat there and I told him he was vaccine injured, blew his mind, and I said we're going to do all of this. We're going to get you off your statin drug, and we're gonna get you off your blood pressure pills. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah,
So
we're
how
gonna do
does
it.
that work? If someone comes in and they prescribe statins from a physician, they come to see you because they like your work. Can you unprescribe that statin, or do they have to voluntarily stop it themselves?
No, it will unprescribe the statin first thing if they're having a side effect from it, which invariably they are. And then we do advanced lipid particle testing. We look at things like LPA little 2. We look at ApoB. We look at HSCRP. We look at myeloperoxidase, homocysteine. We look at these things that predispose the patient to cardiac disease. And if these things are elevated, then we might reapproach the idea of statins, but we also approach why are they having all this inflammation in the first place? Are they metabolically healthy? And invariably, the answer is no, they're not metabolically healthy. They have high insulin levels, right? They're eating sugars all the time. They're eating low protein diets. They're not getting exercise. They're not getting the right nutrients in the body. So yeah, they have high inflammation. And the statin drug, there's some statins like rosuvastatin or Crestor, which actually lowers HSCRP. So I would prescribe that one because it does that, but it's also a water soluble statin drug. So there's the lipid soluble ones like atorvastatin. These ones are more have more risk for causing myalgias, liver injuries, but also mostly crossing the blood-brain barrier and potentially accelerating cognitive decline. And that's some linkage we're starting to see now with the lipid-soluble statin drugs is accelerated cognitive decline. So we get patients off of those immediately, and we may reinvest in maybe rosuvastatin at some point, or maybe something else. If they're really bad, if they have prior MI, something like that, maybe we'll look at some of these newer drugs like PSK9 inhibitors. There's indications for really bad cardiac disease, but there's a lot of other stuff we do as well.
What else are you doing?
Mostly improving their metabolic health, right? Getting that fasting insulin lower, getting the fat off their midsection, right? Everyone has visceral fat, and visceral fat is an independent risk factor for cardiac mortality. more so than high cholesterol. So you have fat on your organs. All that fat on the organs accelerates your cardiac risk.
So how is somebody reducing the fat from their organs?
No, that's tricky. And that's difficult. That takes hard
Yeah.
work. And that's the other component is I try to motivate my patients to exercise. And we're not talking about just getting on the treadmill 45 minutes a day. We're talking about resistance training and specifically progressive overload of the muscle, growing the muscle. A lot of patients are resistant to this. Right? They're resistant to resistance training, right? Because it's difficult. And not a lot of people understand how to stimulate the muscle to grow. I have a bachelor's in sports and exercise science. I was a personal trainer, so I understand how this works. But I'd say most of the population has no clue how to grow their muscle. No clue. And so I tell patients, you need to hire a personal trainer. Like I was. You need to hire them. You need to pay them to watch you and make sure you're doing it right. Because patients will tell me, I've been going to the gym for 15 years. I haven't seen anything. Well, it's because they go there and they do a couple bicep curls. They go walk on the treadmill and they talk to their friend for an hour and nothing gets done. They don't know how to train.
Right? What is progressive overload?
Basically, you create a program over 16 weeks, whatever it is, and you have goals for each of these weeks. So maybe you start out, you're very weak, you can only do a 10-pound dumbbell press, okay? By week 2, you should be progressing. You should be doing more repetitions, maybe more sets, maybe more weight. Maybe that's the first thing you do. You just increase the load a little bit. Maybe it's a 15-pound dumbbell by week 3. So you gradually over the weeks, you get stronger and stronger. Every week you have certain goals to achieve, to attenuate. And so you increase the stimulus on the muscle to make the muscle grow and get stronger and denser, make it more insulin sensitive, turn the muscle into a better endocrine organ. A lot of people think the muscle is just a lever. It just brings the beer can to your mouth. No, the muscle is an endocrine organ. You can't make your pancreas better, but you can make your muscle better. You can make it a better absorber of carbohydrates and sugar to store those things in the muscle as glycogen. Glycogen is the storage form of glucose, and people are very poor glycogen storers. Everyone's very good at storing fat. And it's because they have high insulin levels all the time. They're not training. They have low muscle mass. They have high fat. This is called sarcopenia, and it's an epidemic. You look at people at Walmart, they're all sarcopenic. They have high propensity for fat tissue and low muscle mass. So they're all insulin resistant. I don't need a test to tell me this. I just need to look at someone. I see fat on their midsection. They're insulin resistant.
So if you lift weights, you get stronger muscles, you can store glycogen better. Where does that glucose go if you don't have the muscle to absorb it?
Yeah, it can store as fat.
Stores as fat. Okay. So did your body preferentially store it as glycogen if you have muscles?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, you see it only in athletes though. They'll have super low fasting insulin levels. Like my fasting insulin level is about 2.2, 2.1. That's where it averages. The average patient has a fasting insulin of about 12, right? Some very bad ones are 20, 25. I've seen as high as 50. Fasting insulin level of 50, that's terrible. It means their pancreas is working in overdrive. It's secreting all this insulin all the time to try to lower these blood sugars because they're constantly feeding their mouth. They're eating all the time. Their pancreas never gets a break, right? So it's always secreting insulin. They're going to burn through their pancreas, right? These patients with high fasting insulin, when they're age 30, and I see it sometimes in children too, they have high fasting insulin. They're going to burn through their pancreas. They're going to be diabetics by the time they're 40. If they have it when they're 30, they're going to be diabetics at 40. So you don't want to catch it when it's diabetes. Diabetes criteria is A1C. For me, it's greater than 5.6. For I don't know, the American Diabetics Association, I think it's like 6.2 or 6.1, whatever it is. They keep lowering it every year, lower, which is good. But for me, I even like to catch it before it gets there, before you start getting an elevated fasting glucose, before you have an A1C of 6. You want to catch it when your insulin is elevated, when your insulin is above 5. So you can get this for yourself. Get a fasting insulin level. You want it below 5, ideally. Athlete level is about 3, right? That's an optimal level is below 3. You're very physically active. You have high muscle mass. You have low fat mass, and your body is basically a carbohydrate sponge. You can put a carbohydrate in you, and it stores it right in the muscle as glycogen. Now, for diabetics, oftentimes we prescribe low carbohydrate diet, keto diet, carnivore diet. Just skip the carbohydrate metabolism because you can't do it. Yeah, your pancreas is shot, and you need to give it a break for a time.
Can you get carbohydrate metabolism back, or once you burn through your pancreas, you pretty much have to eat a ketogenic diet?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of patients who've abused their pancreas for too long, and it's too late for them. But I think children and younger adults, they have the propensity to heal it and bring it back and become an athlete, essentially. So that's what I try to teach my patients is to have that high performance attitude towards life, right? To become the athlete, become actually train, not just exercise, but train for a goal, which is to make yourself as healthy as possible. That's why I have that human performance and optimization approach to the primary care patient. I treat every patient like you would treat an athlete, which is increase that protein intake, train hard every day, supplement creatine, right? We do things that bodybuilder and the athlete is doing to optimize performance. We're doing it in the primary care patient to prevent and reverse disease.
Are your patients shocked to hear that muscle is more than just aesthetics? Because I just kind of fell onto this like a couple of years ago, but I thought in the past strong muscles just looking good. I had no idea it actually helped your metabolism.
Yeah, I think most people just think it's that lever brings the soda can to their mouth when they're sitting on the
Yeah.
sofa. That's what they're thought of it, and most of my colleagues too. The internist I worked with once, she saw that I diagnosed one of their patients with sarcopenia, and she's like, "What's this term? You can't be making up these words and telling them to patients."
Was it real? How did you not know what that word meant? So patients, I imagine when they start doing resistance training and they start eating a low carb diet, do their fasting insulins drop pretty fast?
Yeah, typically, if you get off the carbohydrates and you do less frequent eating, your insulin levels come down very rapidly. It's quite reversible.
Do you fast?
I
Okay.
don't. It's because I train so much. So you can put yourself into autophagy by I think three different mechanisms. You can put yourself into autophagy by exercise and resistance training, and actually like interval training. This puts you into autophagy, which is that cellular turnover, eating up dead cells, cancerous cells, improving fasting insulin. You can also improve it by fasting. You can prolong fasting, specifically 18 hours. That puts you into autophagy, or prolong. We're talking about 5-day fasts, right? You can also do it through sauna. Sauna is interesting. Sauna is actually an exercise mimetic. So it mimics exercise for us. So you have a sedentary individual who can't exercise or won't, I don't know, better can't exercise. You put him in the sauna and it can imitate exercise and a bit of that autophagy. I think those are the three main ways. I don't know if you know of any other ways to get people into autophagy, but that's pretty
I
much
didn't
it.
know about the exercise part. I didn't know that lifting or resistance training induce autophagy.
It does induce autophagy. So I don't fast so much because I'm literally training every day. I bust my ass on the tennis court probably 1.5 hours of high intensity training. I lift weights every day. So I typically will eat protein twice a day, uh, or 3 times a day. Usually 3 times a day, I'm eating protein with every meal. Protein and fats 3 times a day. Because I'm trying to maintain my muscle mass while doing all this tennis training. I'm one of the few athletes on the court with actually a good physique. Most of the kids I play against in these tournaments, they're little scrawny twig, like 15-year-olds. They have arms like this. So I'm there, 175 pounds. Like my arms are freaking huge. And so I need to both sustain this muscle mass while playing in professional tennis, which is basically unheard of. Very few people are like this. You can think of a few exceptions like Verdasco and maybe Nadal in his prime. These guys were highly muscular. But most of the athletes, you look at Novak Djokovic and a lot of these young kids, and they're very thin physiques. So what I'm doing is very unique.
How do you manage tennis, exercise, and owning a clinic with employees?
Um, well, actually, I don't have really much for employees. I've managed this all by myself over the past 3 years. Now I have a little bit of help. My mom helps out a little bit with the human performance arena. My dad does too. But I manage it all myself. And the way I manage it is by automation for the most part, right? I don't bill insurance. It's billed automatically through their credit card or the bank account every week. So that saves me a whole lot of time. Billing insurance takes forever. uh, Two, what else? I try not to do a lot of prior authorizations. Those are a pain in the ass. So I tell patients, we can usually get the medicine more affordably through a compounding pharmacy or GoodRx. So we try not to use prior authorizations very much. So doing that, it frees up a lot of my time. And I don't need to see 40 patients a day. I have 3 hours a day that I see patients, right? Usually, right now it's 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's when I see patients. And even doing that, just 3 hours a day, that takes up a lot of time because I need to think about their case. I need to prescribe complex supplements, compounded medications, coming up with a unique plan for patients. So, uh, yeah, I guess I'm just very good at it. I don't know if many people can do what I'm doing. I'm very good at multitasking.
So, wow. So you're open, what, 15 hours a week, your clinic?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Why did you pick 3 to 6?
Right now, it's because I'm training. I have a professional tennis player staying with me, and we train in the mornings every day.
Okay.
I used to be mornings, 10 to about 1 p.m. I might go back to that, but I like 3 to 6 because it allows people to come after work too. So it's very convenient for patients.
Are patients ever weary about such limited hours? Are they worried that, okay, you only open 3 hours a day?
No, because if they're sick, I fit them in. So I leave those hours before and after for patients who are sick. So I always have time to fit in someone as needed, right? That's the other problem with the primary care is try getting a primary care appointment with someone who takes insurance. They're scheduling a month or two out, right? It's because they filled their patients with 40 a day. It's because they have to make sure they bill 40 times a day to keep the lights on. For me, it doesn't matter if I see a lot of patients or not. But I keep those hours open because if someone's sick, I'm going to see them that day. So that time is always there for them.
Okay. And are you practicing independently? Maybe the rules are different in Michigan. How does the physician assistant own his own medical clinic?
Well, we have to have a collaborating MD signed on to that, which we do.
Okay. And both, you have one MD or two that work with you?
Two
And they
work
are
with me.
totally in line with everything you're teaching.
Well, yeah, I specifically brought on one recently because he's very aware of what's going on, and he actually got pushed out of the urgent care for prescribing ivermectin. Right, so he's a very intelligent functional medicine doctor, and I was like, well, why is this functional medicine doctor of 30 years getting slapped on the wrist for prescribing ivermectin? Who has the right to tell him what to do? And I told him about what I was doing. I was like, listen, you have so much experience. You shouldn't be working for these idiots who are telling you what to do. Come work with me. You can do your own thing. You can do whatever you want. And that's what we do here. And so he's loving it. He's prescribing IV ozone, IV nutrients, IV NAD. He loves the IVs, all sorts of interesting peptides and compounds. He comes up with these interesting things and he prescribes it for patients. He recently came across, he gave me this study the other day about colchicine. Like, colchicine? He's like, look at this study. I read this study. It's brilliant. Colchicine's been around for like 1,000 years. It was given to the soldiers in Alexander the Great's army so they could take a spear through the gut and continue on fighting. So he's been prescribing colchicine for patients with chronic pain and all sorts of issues. And I always thought you could only prescribe colchicine for like 1 or 2 days. But no, he prescribes it for patients like long term every day. They're doing great. He has patients with like long COVID. He had one the other day, long COVID, couldn't walk, couldn't move. Gave this guy colchicine. Guy's running the bridge, running 5Ks now. It's amazing. So he comes up with these things. He looks at the mechanisms. He thinks about the root cause of the disease, and he's like, "Whoa, this can apply to this guy. Let's try it out." So it's completely off the books. You can't learn about this in school. You have to spend time to think critically about mechanisms and pathophysiology, which that's what a functional medicine doctor does. They're very brilliant. They think about things very detailed, and they come up with unique solutions that you won't learn about anywhere.
What is colchicine? Is it a pain medication?
Yeah, it's basically an anti-inflammatory pain
Like an
medication. Yeah.
NSAID? No.
Mm-mm. No, it's completely different. Yeah.
Okay. It must be, is it like a plant if it's been around that long, or
Yeah.
there's no way your type of medicine can exist in insurance. It's
No.
impossible. Because if you had to see patients every 7 minutes, of course the endpoint is a pill.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you talk to any of your old PA classmates?
One, he's the only one. He's the only one. He's a conservative, and he was actually really pro-vaccine back in the day, and we would get into polite discussions and arguments about it. But during the pandemic, his eyes were really opened to how wrong he was being pro-vaccine. And yeah, he's now come out and talked to me like, "Hey, man, I follow what you're doing. I've really had my eyes opened up during the pandemic." And so that was cool to see, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah. Well, you're rare because you are going in the face of mainstream medicine. Everything you're doing is the complete opposite, and you're thriving.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So we're coming up on this hour mark. I always ask a couple questions at the end. What is one takeaway you'd want the audience to have from this hour interview?
Well, to demand better from your primary care and your doctors, okay, ask them questions, have intellectual curiosity. Don't just accept a diagnosis. If someone tells you you have something, ask them, why do I have this? What's the root cause? And if they don't have an alternative solution for you, if they don't have like five different things to offer you, go seek different care, right? Because there's not just one solution I found in medicine. It doesn't matter what condition it is. There's probably 5 or 10, there's probably 100 different solutions that you're not even aware of. So if someone tells you this is it and this is what we do, that's dogma. That's religion. That's not medicine, that's not science. Medicine is not straightforward. It's a very gray. It's a complete art. We don't know what the heck we're doing, but we have to find out the root cause and our best ability to find the root cause and try things for patients to optimize their life. Right? There's not one size fits all for everyone, but that's what you get when you go to an insurance-based practitioner. They have to do that. You have to understand how that works. They don't have time to give you five different options and try to come up with different solutions for you. They have time for one option, and it has to be no question. You just have to follow it. But that's not the way it's supposed to be.
You're the only medical practitioner that would say we don't know what we're doing yet, and it's so gray.
It's a complete art to medicine. No one knows exactly what they're doing, right? No one knows. You can't tell for certain what anything does. You have to just try certain things out. We know some things that are very bad. We know some things that are very good. And then there's a lot of gray in between. Like we know smoking's very bad for you, okay? We think fluoride's pretty bad for you, right? We kind of know that vaccines might be helpful at preventing like smallpox and stuff like that, but we're now learning that vaccines can cause a lot of problems too. There's a whole lot of gray area there, okay? From curing smallpox to a guy who has chronic migraines now because he got the jab 2 months ago. Huge difference there. Huge.
Yeah. So, what's the number one thing you'd recommend to anyone off the street to improve their health?
Just lift weights. Don't be afraid of lifting iron weights and actually progressively overloading the muscle. That's the best thing you can do for your health. Progressively overload the muscle.
I love that. You have an X3, don't you?
I do. I've been using
Okay,
it.
I have
Yeah.
one too. I'm still on the small white band, but I'm working.
Oh, you are, yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's hard. I haven't really got beyond that. I mean, I've done the black one once, but that one, you gotta be careful with that one. That one's so
oh my
heavy.
gosh, I know. So,
Dude, it once I went and pushed out, my wrist snapped back, and the thing flew and it hit me in the
yeah,
chest, knocked me out.
I think I was doing shoulder press or something, and my wrist flipped, and the thing came down on my knee. I was like, I'm gonna see the guy go to the hospital after this.
Yeah, yeah.
So, where can people find you? Tell me about your Instagram. Do you work with people out of Florida, or you're only in person?
Well, as far as licensure goes, if I want to prescribe medicines, testosterone, they have to be in Florida. I do health consulting and health coaching for patients outside, so I can still do that. But yeah, they can find me on irondpc.com and Iron Direct Primary Care on YouTube and Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, and follow Stefan's Instagram. I love everything you're posting. I love that thing you posted where it was like the voiceover where you said you eat fries and fast food all day, nobody bats an eye, but as soon as you start to eat some protein, everybody's a doctor. That's so true.
Dude, it's wild because I will get like, I'll be checking out at Publix, and like the lady in the Publix, she's like super old and very sick looking. She's got these ulcers all across her arms. She sees what I mean. She's like, "Oh, you gotta be careful with all the butter."
Yeah, and like her arm fell off during that.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I get health advice from these people.
That blows my mind. The people that give you health advice, and then you look at them and you're like, I don't know if you know what you're saying. Yeah.
They're just repeating what they heard their doctor tell them or the TV tell them.
Yeah, but if you're so unhealthy, you can't give health. Like if you're homeless, you can't teach me to be rich. There's just a rule.
Yeah, that's true.
Perfect way to end it. Well, enjoy your weekend. I cannot thank you enough for doing this. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.